Shambles here. Wanted to talk about sacking Tudor, fixing the board, and the need to start talking to us as fans. 10 months ago, we were Europa League winners. If you let that sit in for a second. 10 months ago, Sonny lifted a trophy in the end of his last game uh, in a Spurs shirt. It was a bittersweet moment. It almost felt like a movie. 25 years of Daniel Levy came to an end. New executive chairman comes in. We have a new CEO, new head coach already in post. New era is what we were promised. But how? How are we sitting here watching a team that looks structurally broken, managed by a coach that players clearly, you know, don't really understand what it is he's trying to implement? Square pegs in round holes is often used, but very much appropriate for Tottenham. But I wanted to talk about three things. The first is that Tudor needs to be sacked. I think it's quite obvious. Second is the new board, and they are not a solution to our problems. And finally, the comms of this club, how poor the communication is with the fans at a time that we're craving any kind of information. But let's start with the most obvious problem, which is Igor Tudor. It's clear that it's not working, and the evidence is not exactly underwhelming. Frank was brought in ultimately as a stabilization tool with what appeared to be a new era for the club. But that decision alone could fill multiple videos. But he came in, had a decent start. But after that, it was just the quality of football was abysmal. And we brought in a replacement for a trophy winning manager, sacked the replacement, brought in Tudor, and now going to have to sack him. Three managers in the space of a year. Just after winning a European trophy tells us everything you need to know about the decision making at this club. But let's focus on Tudor because the defensive shape is a mess. The press is non-functional, and this is from a manager who's renowned for a hard, suffocating press, which we have seen no evidence of. Now, whether that's because he believes Tottenham players cannot achieve a structured press, I don't know, because that in itself is if that is the case, that he doesn't believe the players can run to press or are tactically inept to do so, then we are in more than dire straits. There is very little hope left. But other than that, we've seen very little from Tudor. There's been no improvement, zero improvement. You don't bring in an interim manager and lose 4 games and get no new manager bounce, get no change on the pitch. Something has to give. This is not small potatoes we're talking about here. This is the lifeline to surviving in the Premier League, which trumps everything. And to me, I'll be honest with you, it trumps even the romance of bringing Pochettino back, because relegation for this club would be catastrophic. The counter argument is there, and it will be we can't keep sacking managers, the instability, there's no market for alternatives, and I hear that, but those are not real concerns when your Premier League future's on the table. But the cost of keeping Tudor, who's clearly just not right, not made any discernible difference against the cost of what we lose if we go down, you know. So we need ultimately to decide what we're doing here, and Tudor is not the answer. For me, it's a long-term appointment. I know that sounds counterintuitive because I think what the club are trying to do is somehow, some way get through to the summer, because as I've said on this channel, if we can do that and stay up, Poch comes back, the pre-contract has been drawn, you'll hear a lot about, oh, the club hasn't made contact, and, well-placed sources within the club say there's nothing that's gone on. We can believe what we want. I know what I know, and that is that you'll be the next Tottenham manager if we can make it through to the end of the season and stay up. However, there's no guarantee that we stay up. And if you look at the short-term options out there, which are relatively slim, I think there's a manager right sitting there staring us in our face in De Zerbi who could come in, no fuss, no mess, good style of play, and save us from relegation. It won't happen because it should have happened by now after the Palace game. Tudor should have gone, but the board are inept. They don't know what they're doing. They're afraid to make change. They're afraid to make decisions when really what we need at this point is strength and determination and stability, and someone who comes out and says that they understand what's going on at the club, where we're going wrong, where we're going right. We're not going right in many areas, put it that way. Off the pitch, we're doing all right. And take us forward and make a decision. But that's not going to happen. And that brings me to obviously the second point I wanted to make about the board. We all sighed a collective sigh of relief when Levy left. 25 years at the club turned us into a business, not a football club. And if you love infrastructure, and if you love real estate, Levy's your guy. But the damage done over a long-term period to this football DNA of this football club is I don't want to say it's irreparable, but it's going to take a while to get out of. Top four finishes were somehow deemed acceptable, and they were by which the benchmarks by which the club was incentivized. So Levy's gone, and we need to move on from that. I could do a video about what could happen with Levy's share and the opportunity for him. It works both ways, by the way, in that if he could put enough interest together with his collective share, that he could buy the club out. But I'm not going to get into that right now. But I've said it before, I'm convinced that Vinay Venkatesham, the new CEO, is some kind of Arsenal plant. I know that's tinfoil hat, and we're in the realms of conspiracy theories, but his credentials were strong. The commercial growth that he drove when he was at Arsenal, he's on paper a serious appointment. But everything that he's done since being at Tottenham has no sense of coherent sporting vision. We appointed Frank. Okay, you can say it's a Levy appointment. Well, fine, if he's a Levy appointment, when Levy goes, get rid of Frank if that's what you believe. But he didn't. He wanted to stick by Frank, even after he was told that he needed to be sacked. He wanted to keep him. Like anybody looking at our style of football and the style of manager could see that Thomas Frank and Tottenham were just oil and water. Nice guy, but not right for the club. And that's okay, by the way. How many jobs have we all had that we sit in and go like, I don't think this job's for me, or they say, I don't think this job's for you. So, this is a guy who doesn't seem to have a collective, coherent vision for this football club. Everything's reactive, but reactive too late and reactive in the wrong way. And then there's Peter Charrington, and non-executive chairman, fine, but he's the former CEO of City Private Bank. He's not a football man. That's not an insult to him. It's a job description. He brings financial governance experience. Great. What we're desperate for is someone who understands our sporting identity, the understanding of recruitment cycles, how to navigate the specific pressures of the Premier League, and when you're in a Premier League crisis. So the ENIC ownership structure, did it change when Levy left? Not really. If we look at, what had happened to the club during Levy, that short-termism on the pitch, coupled with the business side off the pitch, Levy was a symptom as much as he was a cause. So the real question here is, can this ownership structure deliver any kind of success for this football club? And success right now is staying up, which I can't believe I'm saying. After 50 years of supporting the club, and I know I look like I'm still 21, but after 50 years of supporting this club, it's come down to this. And I think something that is genuinely underrated as a problem at this football club is how they communicate with the fans, or rather how they don't communicate. Think of everything that has happened since last May, and think of the communication that we've had from this football club. Whether it's boilerplate press releases, whether it's Lange coming out and saying, we didn't want to panic in the transfer window. That transfer window will go down as the single worst decision by any sporting director in the history of the Premier League if Spurs get relegated. To sit on your hands thinking, we're going to be okay, we're too big to fail. Well, do you know what? we're not too big to fail. These guys, they need to come out and give us some semblance of confidence that we can get out of this, because right now, sticking Tudor in front of the camera is not doing anything for anybody's confidence level. And I think this matters for a very specific reason. Atmosphere at the stadium drives performance. The relationship between the fans and the pitch is real and measurable. And when supporters feel connected to the club, when they feel like stakeholders rather than consumers, which they've been treated like for decades now, the atmosphere changes, and the atmosphere at the game reflects that. And right now, that atmosphere is counterproductive, and I'm not here to tell anybody how to feel or how to behave. I think if you pays you money, you takes your chance, and that means you can go in the stadium, and as long as you're behaving with a level of decorum and responsibility, if you want to boo, you boo. If you want to cheer, you cheer. But you have to give the fans something to cheer about. And right now, the only way we get out of this is with the players. And right now, a lot of Spurs supporters feel like they're watching decisions being made in a void, a black hole, with no visibility, no accountability, no one willing to front up and explain what's going on. And that just adds to the apathy and disconnection between the club. Look at how Brighton communicated through their own periods of change. Look at how clubs in Germany work with their supporters. This is not rocket science. This is very, very basic PR communication strategy that these people are paid millions and millions of pounds for, and you and I know better of what to do. You know, these people are communicating like it's 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Football's changed, the world has changed, and we need communication, we need information, we need to feel like these guys are custodians of the club and have a plan that can take us forward, because right now the actions and decisions that they've taken are going to relegate this club, and they deserve it. They ultimately deserve it. The fans, they deserve way, way, way better. They deserve trophies. They deserve champagne and roses. They deserve the world. Tottenham fans are some of the longest suffering, loyal, committed, hardcore fans. And I know you don't actually probably see that from the outside, but from the outside looking in, you know, you see a particular football club, but inside you see a very different one, and that's the problem I'm talking about. The outside is the public face of this club, whereas inside of it, the very soul of it, the fans, it's a very, very different feel and vibe. And these fans are being tested to their very, very limit, and that is not fair. So I'll bring it all together. I don't want this video to be another angry football video. It seems that's all we seem to make these days. Everybody's angry football videos, but rightly so with Tottenham at the moment. You know, this channel is normally, I try to keep it evidence-led, use data where we can, try to be honest, you know, use the evidence, even however uncomfortable that evidence may be. But right now, the evidence tells us three things. Tudor should not be at this football club. The results, the performance, the players, the formation, the strategy, the lack of, the press, the lack of. Prolonging this is not pragmatism. It might be, you might think that it's financial prudence because you don't want to sack him, but I can assure you the financial implications of going down are far worse than paying off Tudor. This is denial. He needs to go, and the club should have made that decision urgently. You know, this new board is not what has been advertised on the tin. It's just the same situation, different day, and that is to change. And the next 9 games are bigger than anything, and you know, we can try and avoid talking about the board because really we just need to get through the next 9 games and get out the other side. But the club's relationship with its fan base is broken, and it's not irreparable, but it requires actual effort and want to fix it. Real communication, real accountability, real acknowledgement that supporters who have stuck with this club through everything deserve better than silence and corporate statements. We're 10 months out from winning one of the biggest trophies in European football. We should be building on that. Instead, we're watching the same patterns play out game after game after game. And fine, you can say, don't come out and communicate, and let's not talk about the board. But what you can do is you can remove this interim manager who's lost 4 games in a row. There's been no new manager bounce. It's time that the people running this club realize that the supporters deserve better than this. You know, you can tell me I'm wrong, and please do, or tell me I'm right. But however painful it gets, we'll be here. Shadow Spurs will celebrate with you, and right now, we'll suffer with you. Shadow Spurs out.